Folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. We wanted to talk again, about food because it's extremely critical. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and I talked earlier today in an earlier video about how I believe that pretty much everything that we're seeing going on is it's just a big psyop. It's just a manipulation of the mind, this mind control game that they're playing because they have to keep us in a state of fear to control us, to further their agenda, to implement the things that they want to implement. But that doesn't mean that these things that they're doing aren't true. I mean, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be afraid and that we shouldn't, take any of this seriously. We should be concerned, and we should definitely take it seriously and get ourselves prepared because myself and many others believe that we are getting really close to that day where food is going to be outrageously expensive and in a lot of ways not available. This has been predicted for a long time now, and more experts are starting to line up, and they're either flat out saying it that it's going to happen, or they're kind of dancing around that subject and kind of trying to as calmly as they can warn people to get ready. Between inflation and shortages, it's gonna be bad, folks. There's just no other way around it. The current numbers from our own government say that food prices are up 7.9%, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I talked about this the other day. I cannot find any single food item that in the last year to 2 years has only gone up 7.9%. I can find nothing. Everything has gone up, at least in the low double digits, and many items have gone up 20, 30, and even 50%. They're saying this is Bloomberg here, kind of like that, let them eat cake, Oh, if you make less than 300,000, it's going to be bad for you. But don't worry, just ride the city bus and cut back here and cut back there and just eat lentils instead of meat. Well, guess what, folks? Lentils have gone up about 50%. They've doubled in price since last year, doubled in price. So even lentils aren't cheap to eat anymore. They've gone up in price. Everything's going up. But more importantly than just the price of things going up is the availability of those things. Now, a lot of people keep saying that we shouldn't worry about it here in America because we produce so much food, that we are an exporter of food, and we produce more food than we need here in the United States. And that's true, we do. But that's only really true if we go into a protectionist phase, that where we only keep our food and that we focus on taking care of our own first. Unless that changes, and I don't see that it's going to anytime too soon. Even though we may not get food from, say, Ukraine or Russia, that's being cut off, although we do get some things from those areas, the fact that there are going to be massive shortages, to the famine level shortages in other parts of the world, it means it is going to affect us here. We're part of the United Nations. America is always the one that's handing out free food to the rest of the world when there are shortages and when there's famine and when there's hunger across these lands. America is always the one to step up. And food is traded on a global market. So you can't say that, well, so what if wheat doubles, triples, quadruples in price? Our wheat, we've got plenty here. It's traded on a global market, folks. And it is going to hurt us here. It is going to affect us here. And I highly doubt that our government, from the state to the federal level, is going to say, you know what, we're just not going to export our food. We're not sending it out anymore. I could be wrong, and that day may happen. But as of right now, it has not happened. And I've seen no signs whatsoever of our government realizing the dangers that's ahead and stockpiling our own food or cutting off or slowing down the exportation of food here in the United States. So because of that, we should certainly expect to see problems and increases and shortages along the way. Let's just play a little history here. Do you remember just about a year and a half ago, maybe just a little bit more than a year and a half ago, a big explosion that went off over in Lebanon. I know it seems like it was decades ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. And without going into details, we all remember that massive explosion. And part of what happened during that massive explosion is basically Lebanon's wheat supply, their wheat reserves, went up in smoke. The building right next to the building that exploded, and here's a picture of it. It destroyed their wheat supply. About 15,000 tons of grain went up in smoke that day. And just to show you guys, this is a chart here showing where Lebanon gets their grain. That's right. The vast majority of the grain that Lebanon gets is from Russia and Ukraine. And right now, they're worried because they're not getting any shipments of grain in because of all this war, and they're worried because they've already their whole food supply was flipped upside down. Their whole country is just in shambles right now because of all this, and now it doesn't look like that they're going to be getting any more food, at least in the areas of the grains, which are major critical foods for this region. And it's not just them. Israel, while they grow a lot of their own food, when it comes to grains, that's not so true. Israel, over half of the grains that they import into their country come from Russia and Ukraine, which is probably why Israel is trying to ride the fence on this whole deal and appear to be a peacemaker. But look at Africa. Africa is going to get hit hard. A lot of these African countries, over half and all the way up to 80 and 90% of their wheat supply come from Russia and Ukraine. Egypt has already experienced shortages in the past and famines, and they're already dealing with it again. And now they're going to get shorted again because of this war. And it's not going to get any better. Here's an article talking about the current situation of farming in Ukraine, and there's been some private companies do some analytical work on what's going on, and they estimate that right now, and this actually was as of about 5 days ago, is the data that they put out. So about 5 days ago, the winter wheat harvest, that about 28% of it was already destroyed because of the war. Tanks, bombs, all kinds of stuff. And it could get worse. So that's already over a quarter of it, of the winter wheat, is done. And it could get worse and worse. Look at this chart here. This is just how much food, where Ukraine ranks in food. I mean, they're the first in sunflower seed, but they rank pretty high in a lot of other stuff. Corn, various other grains, including wheat. They're a major producer, folks. And like we've said here for the last 3 weeks, this is doing some major disruption. Russia's the same way. Russia is a major producer of food also. They're one of the world's largest producers. They're the #1 wheat exporter, and they produce a massive amount of food. And their stuff is either not being exported, or there's sanctions against them, or we're going to see these countries that are going to not abide by sanctions because their choice is to either sanction Russia or their own people starve. And I think that's where the backfire is going to happen on these sanctions. This problem is at a critical level, and it's only just started. And when I showed you that article about Ukraine, that's just talking about their winter wheat. You see, they're getting ready to start planting soon for the spring. And this article here goes into detail about how it's actually really critical because there's just not enough food. And it talks a lot about corn. If you take away what China claims that they have in corn reserves, and you remove American corn from the global market, the world has about 30 days worth of corn supply. That's it. It's not a lot because, and that's including Russia and Ukraine. So if you take Russia and Ukraine out of that mix, you're talking about global, famine level shortages when it comes to things like corn. And as we all know, corn is an extremely critical commodity. So much on this planet in food has corn in it, between syrups and cornmeal and oils and things like that. Corn is extremely critical. And then also animal food. Virtually all livestock feed has corn in it. And so we're getting to the point that a lot of people are getting nervous, and I'm starting to see more and more articles out there showcasing the nervousness in experts and in market experts and agricultural experts of how critical things are. And I haven't even mentioned yet the shortage of fertilizer, and that too is also critical. And so there's a lot of people that are getting really nervous about it. Now, what's the story here in America? Remember I said in the beginning of the video that America can be completely food self-sufficient. We can be completely independent on our food, just like we have the capability of being independent when it comes to our fuel, our oil. We're not, because we have leadership that chooses not to, but we have the capability. Well, sorta, because things are kind of going downhill on the American front also. While we're still producing quite a bit, we've been producing less and less each year. And we're producing less and less acreages than we were 10 and 20 years ago. A substantial amount. I talked the other day of how we're now planting about 20 million less acreage right now of wheat than we did almost 20 years ago. It's a substantial reduction of wheat production. And there's probably a lot of reasons that, farmers can't make any money anymore. If they can't make any money, why are they planting it? There's also a lot of drought problems. And this is where it's going to start getting really scary here in the United States, when we have all these global food problems. And then here in the United States, we're dealing with serious drought issues. Here's a map here, and this was just updated 5 days ago. Look at this. I mean, we're talking, I can remember, I was telling my wife just a little bit ago, showing it to her, and I said, I can remember when it was just California, and then the drought kind of moved over into Nevada and parts of Colorado. I mean, we were talking about that last year. Now the drought completely covers pretty much everything from the Missouri-Kansas line west, parts of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin, looks like most of Iowa, Arkansas, all the way down south into the Gulf Coast, and then also parts of the East Coast. We're dealing with a serious famine. In fact, it's being reported as a 1,200-year famine. It's the worst drought. I'm sorry, I keep saying famine. The worst drought in 1,200 years here in the United States. Is anyone actually listening to this out there? I mean, it amazes me that so many people just aren't paying attention. We're dealing with major food shortages all across the world. I mean, there's problems in South America because they're having major droughts down there. There's problems over in China because of torrential rains that they've been getting every year and flooding out a lot of farmland. We're dealing with global inflation everywhere on a substantial level. And now we're also dealing with this war that's drastically cut in to the global food and farming supplies. And then here in the United States, we're dealing with the worst drought this country and this continent has seen in 1,200 years. This is severe, folks. And this is why, if nothing else, if you don't believe any of the other conspiracy stuff that I talk about, this is why it's very serious that we get prepared. This is why I talk about food all the time. I talk about growing your own food. I talk about getting seeds to grow your own food. That's why, I promote a really good seed company down in the description below. Also a freeze-dried food company down in the description below. But if you can't get that stuff, get it locally. It doesn't matter where you get it. You need to stock up. You need to stock up on the tools and the supplies to preserve your food, to grow your food, to process your food, and you need to just stock up on the food itself, because I believe we are watching a perfect storm form all around us. And most likely come this fall, we're going to really see the serious effects of all of this happen. Now, the war could just end tomorrow and things go back to normal, but I believe that that's very, very highly unlikely. We could have massive rains and a wet weather for most of the western United States. but probably not going to happen. They're saying that it's going to be worse than it was last year. And when all of this is added together, there is no good news when it comes to food, not just here in the United States, but all across the planet. This is the kind of level of famine that wars are started, that civil wars, a lot of civil unrest. We could be watching that happen, not just in other countries, but also in our own. So folks, don't let yourself get caught just empty-handed. I mean, take advantage now while you still can to go out. Yeah, food prices are up. Food prices are up 10, 20, 30, 40% is what they were last year or the year before. So certainly you're going to pay more. But at least you can still get it right now. And if you have to cut back and make sacrifices in your life in other areas, I think it's well worth it, because there's not much worst case scenario for a person, especially a family, when you get to the point that you're starving and you don't have food and you can't get it. And you certainly don't want to be in a position that the only way you can get food is to go crawling to the government and complying with whatever that they want you to do, to have the shackles of slavery being put on you even heavier, just so that you can eat. You want to be as independent as you can and take care of yourself. So get stocked up now and be ready this year to really produce a lot of food. All right, folks, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.